Hello there, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey on men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now today I'm joined by a special guest. Welcome Jim.
Hi there. And hi there.
Yes, nice to see you. And we're on the banks of, what was the river?
It's the River Team.
The River Team. And it's a chilly January day. You can see the wildlife behind us. There's a couple of swans making up the sort of backdrop. But today, something of a departure from what I normally do on the channel, because my videos tend to be quite focused and they tend to be quite theme specific, as the gulls are getting in on the act as well. But today, something totally different, because I often talk about Chap Nirvana as a destination, a sort of a place that we're all on a pilgrimage towards. And I've never really defined what Chap Nirvana is, because it's undefinable. It's different for every one of us. It depends what your spiritual or religious beliefs may be. It can be just contentedness. I mean, for me, Chap Nirvana is just, I just want to be content at the end of my journey, when I achieve that final destination. So I want to find out how other people approach that pilgrimage to Chap Nirvana. And I got talking to Jim. We interacted through the YouTube channel, and we had a sort of Zoom call, and I thought, well, Jim's got a life which I think is worthy of sharing with you gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world, because, you know, our paths are all very different, and I'm not going to do a lot of talking here today. I just want Jim to do the talking. I want him to tell his story of his journey to Chap Nirvana, and we will perhaps, I'll just steer the path a little. And I'm going to be really unkind here, and I'm just going to ask a very open question to Jim, and that is, Jim, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Can you tell me about your life journey to Chap Nirvana? We'll perhaps break it up into chapters, and we'll maybe stop and unpack some of the big things I know we're going to talk about. But tell me about yourself. Tell me where it all began.
Okay, well, I was born what is called London, but it was Middlesex beforehand, and parents retired down to Devon, which is where we are right now, and I took on some various jobs, and eventually I joined the Royal Observer Corps. Now, the reason why I joined the Royal Observer Corps is because my health conditions couldn't actually allow me to get into the military, per se, the armed forces, and that goes back to when I was a child. I was about 11. My father died in front of me, and somehow it affected me, and it gave me a condition that wouldn't allow me into the military. But as luck would have it, there was an advertisement on the television, and I thought, I still want to serve my country, and this was it. And it was an advert for the Royal Observer Corps, and I contacted them immediately, was interviewed, and started, and I think that was at the age of 16.
Wow,
at the
really
age
young.
You're really young, yeah. Oh, I should say that, like you, I have had a military family. My grandfather served in the First World War. He was one of the old contemptibles and served the first, well, that's what the Kaiser called them anyhow, and he served at Mons, so whether the Mons Angels or the Angels of Mons occurred, I don't know. But he was certainly an inspiration from the tales that I heard within the family. From then, there was a great uncle that actually got killed during the First World War, and he was a runner in the trenches.
Oh, wow.
He was machine gunned down, sadly. His name was Valentine. Then on to the Second World War, and my uncle served in REME, which is the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, and I think he went to Norway as well. And my auntie, at the time, it was the Women's Auxiliary Air Force.
The WAFs.
The WAFs, as they were. Then they became RAFs, and now they're just Royal Air Force, I understand, which is great. And obviously I was surrounded by all of this, the tales as well, and it does make an imprint onto your subconscious, and I thought, I still got to do something for my country. I don't want to let the family down. So I joined the Royal Observer Corps, and the Royal Observer Corps was one of those organisations that you don't hear much about. We don't get a lot of glory, but essentially we were created in 1925, that was the official date, but it has its roots even further. First World War, and arguably you could say back to Elizabethan times when the Spanish Armada.
Oh, right, yeah, of course.
We were the beacon lighters. And that is why you see on the badge the beacon lighter.
Oh, that's what it is.
That's
right,
the beacon
I see.
lighter. Yeah, forewarned is forearmed. Premonitus, premunitas.
It's something, I think, which a branch of them. Was it classed as the military? It was under the auspices of the Royal Air Force, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were administered by the Royal Air Force. We actually answered to the Home Office and reported to the Home Office, and it's quite a fascinating organisation. Essentially, when war broke out in the 1939-1945 war, we were part of the Dowding system.
Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding.
You got it, absolutely. One of the driest persons without a sense of humour, I would say. But what a brain, because he created something, as we call it, the Dowding system, which really was to do with frontline radar, which was in its infancy at the time and could only be projected out towards sea. And that's why the Royal Observer Corps came into its own. And during the Battle of Britain, we would be able to spot the aircraft, relay the information onwards, and then it'd be for the scrambled eggs to decide which squadrons were going up and how many.
Right.
You know, there was some times where you couldn't stop it all, but essentially we were front line of this country.
And I think we've all got sort of that mental picture of these chaps, you know, with the charts of the silhouettes of the enemy aircraft, and they're spotting them in the, you know, the sort of the horizon and things, aren't they? And calling it in, and then the old Spitfires going up to sort them out.
The kind of report would be Heinkel 111s, Heinkel 111s, 10,000 feet, 100 plus. And that's really just saying how many they were there. They would have specific machinery that would actually guide or give them an idea of the height. That's it. Yeah. And the direction they were coming from.
And then I understand that the mission changed. So as the sort of radar became more effective, which kind of makes the human eyeball obsolete, then it transitioned into the modern, more frightening era.
Yes, that's right. We were a part of the Cold War. So I'm a Cold War warrior, you could say.
You and me both.
Absolutely. In a very cold part of Devon at the moment. But the Cold War was essentially a very frightening time for Western world. I would say probably for Russia as well, for the Russian people, because there was always this possibility that a politician got the ump about something, and we were all at the mercy of the politicians.
Indeed.
Including the frontline armed forces. So we were in that position where we had mutually assured destruction.
What a terrible sentence that is.
It is, isn't it? Mutually assured destruction. And if that was going to put faith in anybody, I don't know. Yeah. But essentially what we would do would be, that is in the field, we would be in posts, which are about 14 feet underground. We had equipment that was not electronic. It was the most basic equipment at all, but essentially we'd be able, using that equipment, to determine the power of the bomb, the height and the direction.
Wow.
And then we would report that in via landline, because there was very few posts with radios, and that would have been useless under a nuclear attack anyhow.
Amazing.
The actual HQ would have been even more amazing to watch, because you had, much like you had during the Second World War, we've all seen those images of plotters plotting.
Oh yeah, like the old. Yeah.
Absolutely, there was a similar thing, and you had the people who had taken all the data, all the information, had this perspex in front of them, and they had to write in reverse, backwards, because the Home Office guys, they're all scientists, and Home Office scientists always have this habit of just rubbing over something. So we had to take that out of the equation, and yeah, it was quite fascinating. But our secondary mission was also to spot aircraft. But in a nuclear war situation, you're not going to go.
No. Well, I think that's a really interesting part of your life, because you did that for 4 years, so you were quite a young man. And I think the bit that I draw from that is that even though you had a strong ethos that you wanted to serve your country, would you describe yourself as sort of a patriotic person?
Very much.
Love the
so.
country?
Yeah, very much so. When I say love the country, I'm not talking about the individual races that are in this country. I'm talking about everybody,
So the concept of the country and its strength. I think for me that's where I draw from your story there, is that even though you were maybe for reasons outside of your control unable to serve in the way that previous generations have, you found a way, you made the way possible for you to serve. So from that period of your life, and I'm a big person, you'll know from my videos that I always try to draw lessons that can be shared. So what from maybe your period of service, how was that a foundation that you took forward for the rest of your life? What lessons did you learn from that going forwards?
I think the main one would be camaraderie. When you're part of an organisation, whether it was an organisation like ourselves, mostly manned by civilians, or whether you're in the actual military forces, you develop a sense of camaraderie, and you look after each other's backs. That isn't always the situation in Civvy Street.
No, I think you're right, and it's a brotherhood, isn't it? And when you're in it, you're in it for life.
Absolutely. And right now, I'm still part of the Royal Observer Corps Association, but also part of the Royal Air Forces Association as well. So we're part of the Royal Air Forces family.
We're in the same club?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Jim. I mean, that's fascinating, and it's great to know that we shared a similar coloured uniform in the past.
Absolutely.
And that bond extends forever, doesn't it? It's something wonderful. I was working on a war pensions committee yesterday with a group of guys who were from all different military backgrounds, and the thing that bring you all together is that service, and it's something quite unique that people who haven't experienced that don't fully understand, I think, to a degree.
That's right.
So onwards with your journey to Chap Nirvana. No, I'm not going to I don't want to unpick every moment of your life, right? I'm not going to keep you here for hours. But I know there is a big part of your life which I think people can learn from.
Yeah.
And that is where you navigated a very serious health condition and how you've come through it, and the mindset that took you through that. That's really what I want to explore. So if you're happy to do so, will you just tell us your story about your health condition?
Certainly. In 2019, I developed some symptoms that I wasn't fully au fait with. I did not understand them, and not wishing to sound crude or anything like that, but stools were black. I was vomiting black as well, and constantly vomiting, and in the end I was diagnosed with bowel cancer. Now, it was great really that they did manage to diagnose it. Had to go through all sorts of tests, including blood tests and the old X-ray machines, etc.
Yeah.
And I was put in for an operation, and I have to say, God bless our NHS. They were wonderful people. They looked after me, got me through it.
National treasure.
Absolutely. Now, the first time I had cancer, I was looked after at Torbay Hospital.
So that's a local.
Yes.
People might not know, if you're in Oklahoma, Torbay is like a fairly large town, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a seaside town, but it's got a lovely hospital with lovely people. And they looked after me very well. I had my operation, and for 5 weeks there was more tubes in me than the London Underground. But for 5 weeks it was nil by mouth. So for 5 weeks I didn't consume anything via my mouth. I had a tube inserted into me, and there was a special kind of food that they were putting in. And this might sound incredibly odd, but I found out from the surgeon that what they had put in for me was something that had been developed from the Second World War when the medics went into the camps like Auschwitz.
Ah, right.
And saw there was a lot of people that were starving. By just feeding them normal food, it killed them. So they developed something, what I ended up with.
So it's like an easily absorbed thing, is it?
Absolutely. And it sounds odd to say this, but I'm kind of grateful for the people that were in the camps.
Oh, they
did
the sort of the testing of these things so that you could benefit from it.
Absolutely. It's kind of weird saying that as well. But anyway, 5 weeks on, and I think it was about 18 months later, I developed it again. And it appeared to be the scar tissue from the first operation that had created even more tumours within the plumbing. And diagnosed, and they put me in for operation, which I did. Wasn't so bad this time. I was in there for still a couple of weeks, but I had to recuperate at home in the end. And eventually they put me on chemotherapy. I was on chemotherapy for 7 months.
Oh dear.
And the day after the last chemotherapy session, I ended up having a seizure. There was a bleed on the left side of my brain, so I couldn't speak, and I couldn't control my right arm. So my wife saved my life in that respect. She got the ambulance in, they carted me off to hospital, and again, another operation. So there was 3 operations within.
Was that on the head operation up here?
Yeah, you can just about see the dent.
Oh yeah. It's not too bad though.
It's not too bad. It healed over a little, and again, they were brilliant. They looked after me. Used to fox the doctors and nurses a bit, because one of the questions they'd ask you is, can you tell me who the current Prime Minister is and the monarch? And I often said, well, it's Queen Victoria and Disraeli. And I thought, I'm going to have you.
Well, I think you might have difficulty declaring who the Prime Minister is at the moment, because it does change quite often these days, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. If I was in there again, I wouldn't be able to answer the question.
And you bounced out of it all in one piece and happy and well now. That's the good news.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I was going to ask you, because you've glossed over it really quickly there, but one of the things I wanted to ask you, and it's a question which I always feel frustrated when I see an interviewer talking about it on the telly, they'll ask a question for which the answer seems obvious, but when you first get that diagnosis and they say the word cancer, did that have an impact on you? How did that feel? Was it like a brick wall, or did you already come to that conclusion yourself?
Well, this might sound strange again, but my wife was with me at the time the surgeon came through, and the surgeon looked more nervous than anybody. He really did. And he just said, look, it is cancer. It's got to be done. My wife and I, we looked at each other, and no word of a lie, as true as I sit here, we looked at each other and said, well, it is what it is. Let's get on with it.
Because you were relatively young then as well. You would have been in your very early 60s, yeah?
That's right, yes.
So you're fully expecting another 30 years of life, and suddenly did you feel like the rug's been pulled from under you, or from the beginning was it a fight mentality?
It's, I am human. Yes, it was very frightening to hear that. But at the same time, you had to think positively. I wanted to come through this and be with my wife again. I didn't want to be dead on a slab.
Yeah.
And that's really what it was. The positive side of things kept me going.
So you think the positivity is really important?
Absolutely. In any situation that you find yourself in, whether it's dire or whatever, just think, this isn't going to last forever. This is not going to last forever. I must move on. And the whole episode, I suppose in the past 6 years, really has made me more spiritual. Not necessarily religious, although I did pray to God the first time around. But it's made me more spiritual and seeking more philosophical answers and ways to live life. Because, at the end of the day, we must see each day as a success. If I get to the next day, I see it as a success.
Yeah, every day. We talked about this earlier when we were having a coffee, and I said if people speak to me and they say, "How are you?" and they think I'm being funny, but my response is always the same. Every day is a gift, and even if it's a really crappy day, I'm still here and I'm still going forwards.
Yeah.
And I think that's people who adopt that mentality will more often than not probably come out the other end.
And to be honest, this thinking positively all the time has served me well. When you come out of a situation like that, you're not capable of doing everything that you want to do. And for example, yes, I used to enjoy walking, but when you come out of that situation, you think to yourself, right, I'm going to walk from here, my house, to the end of that part of the road. And you do it.
Yeah.
Believe you me, by the time you've done that, you're not feeling as though you want to go any further. But what you do is the next day, and I did this with my wife as well, she was good enough to come out, keep an eye on me, and say, right, I got so far, then I'm going to make it to that lamppost.
Yeah.
And the next day I would make it to that lamppost, come back. And this is how it went every day. You know, so every day you'd say, right, I'm going to make it to the next lamppost.
So it's all small goals.
Small goals.
Nobody climbs Everest in one go.
Absolutely. you get to base camp before you do anything else.
Absolutely, yeah. I talk about that with goal setting when I do coaching. I said nobody climbs Everest. Nobody's ever climbed Everest in one go, and they're never going to.
No.
Base camp, camp 1, camp 2, as many camps as you need. Then we get to the top, and then we've got a plan to get down in one piece as well. That's fantastic. So, was there any shall I phrase it this way? If there's anybody out there now who is embarking upon a period of their life journey in which they're facing a health condition, or they think that they have a health condition but they're afraid to confront it, is there anything that you're experienced that we just discussed there you could share which would be useful?
Okay. If you've got symptoms that are frightening you, absolutely go to your doctor. That is got to be number one priority. The sooner things like this get caught, then the better chances people will have of surviving. The surgeon told me that, you know, if I had this 40 years ago, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
So medical technology and knowledge has advanced significantly to deal with this. So, you know, top marks to the scientists and the engineers that have actually created all this equipment that it can catch it early.
Yeah.
And it's not just you know, things like cancer. It can be various other illnesses. If it's something that you're not sure about, you feel odd about, get yourself checked. Yeah. And that goes for men and women.
No, I mean, I've broached that. I'm in my mid-50s now, and, you know, the looming prostate keeps coming up on the horizon. Yeah. My father's 93, nearly, but he had prostate cancer diagnosed when he was in his 60s. Lived with it well for 35, 40 years. And I had a PSA test this year, but I wrangled about going for that test because I thought to myself, if I know, is it going to spoil the rest of my life because I've got this sort of Damocles, or is blissful ignorance better? And I thought, no, of course it isn't. Blissful ignorance will not save your life. And you know, I went to the doctor and everything's fine, but you know, it's about grasping the nettle, isn't it? And even if you think something's not right, get it tested. And in a country, we're fortunate, not everybody watching this will be, of course, so they may not have universal free healthcare, but you know, the National Health Service is the gift that keeps giving if you live in this country, and saved your life
3 times.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
So that's the hard bit to talk about, because you know, no man's life is all seriousness, is it? And I know we share a few hobbies, which
we do indeed.
Is sparkling on your wrist. So tell me what you've got on your wrist. I will take a photo of it and I'll flash it up on the screen when we're talking about it. But what have you got there?
I have an Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch. It was the design that came in 2021.
Yeah.
I'm still in the 20th century, I think. But, and I bought it specifically, and this was just after my first operation. I thought, right, got over that. Thought too quickly on that one. But I wanted a decent watch. I'd taken early retirement, or I was taking early retirement, so I managed to draw out some of my pension money. Wife did the same, and the pair of us ended up buying Omegas. We went to the local AD, And I would recommend anybody to do that rather than buy it online from somebody you don't know. Go to a proper AD, and if you have to spend money, then you spend money, but at least you know it's genuine. And I always wanted an Omega Speedmaster because of it represented the moon landings in 1969, which is the significant date that actually affected the rest of my life.
Right.
As I said earlier, I was right next to my father when he passed away. But he was the one in 1969 that got me out of bed. So I was 11 years of age, got me out of bed. It was always early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy and wise.
Absolutely.
And got me down so I could actually witness the moon landings. Now, I know there's lots of theories that it never happened, but when you've seen a Saturn V lying on its side, you know that it has no other use other than go to the moon. It's too big for an intercontinental ballistic missile, so yes, they did do it. And this, every time I wear this, which I wear on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, it reminds me of that period in 1969, the change of my life, and also my father.
Oh, that's lovely. I think that's one of the things, unique things for a gentleman, is that a wristwatch can signify such a sentimental moment in life or a moment of great relevance. And the beauty of it is every time you look at it, many times a day to tell the time or look at the date or whatever, or just through the desire to look at something beautiful, it jogs that memory, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
One of the little things us men have, because women have their jewellery and handbags and shoes. For a man, really, it is kind of limited to a wristwatch.
Absolutely.
And try and explain that to your wife, but...
I keep on saying, look, I need it. It's important to have it.
So you said you wear it on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Is that particularly days of relevance, or?
Well, Tuesday is always Speedy
Tuesday, yeah.
Wednesday, I think I'm getting to enjoy wearing this. Yeah. Take it off. But I do have a number of other watches as well at home. Mostly not expensive. I've got a Satina DH500M. Lovely watch. And it goes down 500 metres. Very well made. Less than £1,000, but it's a tough old boy. I've got a tracer at home which has to go back to the manufacturer because it started ingress of vapour, so it's got to be sorted out. That one is very precious to me and it's a very cheap watch, but it's very precious to me because it was one that I wore in hospital on all occasions.
Got you through a tough time?
Well, it was one of those things that it's got tritium in it.
Right.
Okay, now if you've ever been into an NHS ward, when it's lights out, it's lights out. It's worse than a lights out in wartime. But if you want to know the time, the only way to do it is look at your watch. And if it's got tritium, you can see it.
Yeah, so it got you through.
Yeah, absolutely. But so that's a sentimental thing.
But the Speedy is the king of the show, is it?
It's the bee's knees.
It's a very nice looking watch. And you got a nice bracelet on that one as well.
Thank you. Yeah, they redid the bracelet on this one. It was... Beforehand, it was a big chunky one. This one's tapered down.
It's quite stylish. I'm wearing a Datejust now.
Yeah,
and
that is nice.
But the bracelet, the quality of the bracelet is not dissimilar, are they? They're
not that dissimilar.
They're quite dissimilar. Oh, it's got a nice weight to it.
It is. Honestly, you wouldn't know you were wearing it.
That is a lovely watch. I've often ummed and ahed about a Speedy because I'm not a huge fan of chronographs because I find it difficult to read the time with so much going on. But they're actually more distinctive when you hold one in your hand.
Yeah.
It's a very nice piece. It's beautiful. It's lovely.
Thank you. I try to keep with the authenticity of what they had on the moon landings, and this is...
Oh, it's Hesselite?
Hesselite.
Yeah.
Hesselite. It's not
not the sapphire.
Sapphire at all. The guys upstairs wouldn't have had any sapphire on the back. It was a working tool.
Yeah.
And importantly, it got the Apollo 3 crew back.
It did,
to Earth.
yeah.
So
a historic. I think it might be arguable to say there is no more historic watch than the Speedmaster, really,
the Speedmaster.
up to this point, until whoever gets the job to Mars.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Omega, they do actually make one for Mars as well.
It's still the official NASA watch, isn't it?
It
So in
certainly
theory, when they embark back up into the stars, mind you, I don't know, perhaps they will have progressed by then. They might have digital watches or something, probably.
There's a digital Speedmaster.
But no, that's a lovely piece. And I like the sentimentality behind it as well, because it's the underpinning story which makes cold steel into something interesting.
I'm not one for being too snobby about watches, so I am more than happy to buy watches that a couple of £100 maybe, or even 500. In fact, I'm starting to buy watches from a company called Sterling.
They trade on this sort of military relationship, don't they?
That's right. You've got Tom, who's an actual serving British soldier, and when you buy one of the watches, so much goes towards PTSD.
That's good.
Which is something, and that, funny enough, is a line that I'm tending to follow. If there's a company that's giving back to global society, if you like, to Mother Nature, to human beings, and they've got a watch that I quite like the look of and would be happy to wear, I'll buy it.
That's good.
You know, and one company is AV8.
I've seen their stuff. They do sort of, well, as clearly in their name, they're aviator style watches, aren't they? Like the classic, quite large, with quite easy to read.
Almost pilot watches, but not necessarily for pilots, but really paying homage to either special people that have been in the forces.
Yeah, I like them. They're good stuff.
They do have this thing with the RBL, the Royal British Legion, and I've got a pilot's watch which they did, which was for Help for Heroes. So yeah, those are sorts of things that I do tend to go for. The Satina itself, they do something for the turtles in Florida.
Oh, right.
I think it is. I can't remember. Turtle Conservancy, I think they call it. And, if what I give provides that kind of help.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think as I'm getting older myself, and all of a sudden the ethics of what I buy becomes more important to me.
Yeah.
And the origins of what I buy. Well, and I know that's first world stuff, because when I was young and I had no bloody money, I bought whatever I could afford.
Sure.
But now I'm a little bit older, got a bit more stability, and I think to myself, where did this come from?
Yeah.
You know, who made it, and what was their conditions like?
Yeah.
And then I will definitely base my decision based on the answers I get from that.
Absolutely.
Are you the same?
Yeah, very, very much so. It's probably why I've got this thing against electric cars. The mining of lithium and cobalt seems to sort of go against the whole idea of the environment, saving the environment anyhow. So I'm not completely in favour of that. But you know, when you do the research for many of these products, you think to yourself, well, hang on, that's a trade-off. We're not necessarily helping the world by buying that. Yeah. Even though it's being promoted as that.
We're just making ourselves feel a bit better.
That's it.
Anyway, aside from watches, I did notice that you've got a Spectre ring on, so I take it you're a James Bond fan.
I certainly am.
A fellow James Bond fan. Okay, right, so this video is going to go in a totally different direction now, all right? So I'm going to ask you some questions here. So what do you think of the last Bond film? No Time to Die.
The one with Daniel Craig.
Where he dies. What did you think of that? Because that was a total shock to me.
It was a total shock, but it was a stunner of a movie, I think. Having said that, if you got him killed off, kind of makes sense not to make any more. Yeah. You know, at the end of the day, he doesn't sort of reincarnate as another James Bond. So it seems logical to me that is the end. That is the end. And I've got all of the movies as well at home, so a bit of a collector for that.
Go on, now, what's your favourite? Is there a favourite? Can you have a favourite when they're all so iconic?
They're also iconic. You've got to understand that much of it is camp anyhow. Yeah. I'm probably somewhere in the middle with Roger Moore.
See, I'm a Moore fan because I was born in I started watching the movies in the Moore era. Yeah. And my favourite Bond film is totally against everybody's ideology, and it's either Octopussy or A View to a Kill, because that was steeped in the era in which I was a young man. Yeah. Duran Duran soundtrack, Grace Jones. Yeah. Believe it or not, I've always had a strong passion for Grace Jones.
She's brilliant.
And it was just my era, and I think, even though I think technically, if you look at the books, Sean Connery was probably the best portrayal of Bond because Ian Fleming was alive then and he probably had some influence on it.
Actually, Ian Fleming didn't really want Sean Connery.
No, I hear that because he was seen as a bit too much of a blunt instrument, wasn't he?
Apparently.
He pictured sort of David Niven, not a brash Scotsman covered in tattoos who'd just come out of the Navy as a seaman, not an officer.
Well, David Niven did actually appear in the spoof version of it.
He did, the first Casino Royale.
Yeah,
he got to be James Bond. Yeah.
He did in the end.
Sir James Bond as he was in his character. So where do you see it going next? Who can you see as the next James Bond? Have you got a thought on that?
Yeah, I understand progression and progressiveness, but I think when you're talking about an iconic figure like James Bond, you really got to keep to the main story, the main kind of character as well. I don't think trying to introduce new ideas, maybe politically correct ideas, does it any favours at all.
No, well, it hasn't worked with other characters like Doctor Who and things like that.
No, it's gone down that route of we've got to do this because it's progressive, we've got to send out an agenda, a message, and the average viewer, they're not interested in the message, they just want to be entertained. And if the message isn't entertaining, they'll just stay away in their droves. I would.
Yeah. Would, So who do you think then? Go on, I'll press you.
I'm not au fait with many of the modern actors, but I reckon Tom Holland could probably do it.
Tom Holland, Spider-Man.
Yeah,
it's
I
interesting.
reckon he could. He's got that sort of character.
You don't think he's a bit small of stature? Because Bond is traditionally quite a big fellow, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
But then again, it's not beyond the realms.
No.
It's good. It's an interesting angle. I would love it to be Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
So superhero, Superman, not Spider-Man.
I'd go with that.
But I think he's just tipped over age now because Bond needs to be in his mid to late 30s, in my opinion, to do what he does.
You don't want Roger Moore ending up chasing younger women.
No, it was creepy, wasn't it? When he was 58 years of age and he was kissing women in their 20s, I thought, that... Not that it was intended to be like that. They were portraying him as a younger man, but it just didn't seem right.
And that was one of the reasons why he stopped doing it, because he didn't.
He acknowledged it, didn't he? Yeah, he acknowledged it.
Yeah.
And Dan Craig, even at his, he's only, I think he's 55 or so now.
Something like that.
But when he filmed the last Bond film, he was only been about 51. And they even in the actual plot, they portrayed him as an aging, almost dinosaur type character.
Yeah.
So I think they need to look at men in their mid 30s. I think really to have the longevity as well, because they want the next one to make a number of films. One presumes.
I think it would, if they're going to do it, it would probably be better to do a remake of Dr. No and then work their way through it all again.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I think so, because Dr. No is a brilliant movie for the time as well.
It is. They seem dated when you watch them now, but I still think there's an authenticity with the simplicity of it,
Absolutely. And there are some interesting things to note about those early movies, and if you remember Sean Connery as Bond, I can't remember, I think it was Thunderball, he used an underwater camera.
Oh yeah, and a rebreather, wasn't it?
A rebreather.
All these things are...
Well, that underwater camera ended up becoming the Nikonos.
Oh, right.
Because they didn't... I don't think they had cameras like that, per se. But Nikonos took it on.
Yeah, so they developed it to catch up with the technology which was needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fascinating stuff.
It is fascinating.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, many of the tools that James Bond uses... I think comes from Ian Fleming's background, because
of course,
if you go to where's the Motor Museum in Hampshire? Bewley.
Oh, Bewley, yeah.
That is where they also trained all the SOE people, and they've got a museum there, and you can go in there and you can see all the equipment they use, which any James Bond, future James Bond, would be pleased to use nowadays.
That's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they won't better Sean Connery, he is the epitome, I think, of Bond, but it'll be interesting to see where they go next. There's
absolutely.
No obvious candidate, I think. There's nobody who screams out, this man needs to be James Bond, but we'll see. Oh, good.
But my favourite baddie, I think, has to be Goldfinger.
Auric Goldfinger.
Auric Goldfinger. I expect you to die, Mr. Bond. I love that.
I read somewhere that he couldn't speak English and he learned the lines without knowing what they meant. So he just delivered what he was told to deliver by his translator. So it's fascinating when you think of that.
It is. And the interesting thing about Gert Frobe, before the Second World War, he was actually a member of the Nazi Party.
Was he?
But he came out of it and he actually saved, I think it was some Jewish people from going to the camps. In fact, in Israel, they wouldn't actually promote Goldfinger.
Well, because of that?
Because of that. I think they relented when they found out what good he'd done, but he came out of the Nazi Party.
Good.
That was Gert Frobe.
There's been a lot of good villains.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've been rabbiting on for a long time. I want to ask you one final question.
Yeah.
All right? Now, I want you to imagine that we have access to a time machine, a TARDIS, if you will, as we've spoken about Doctor Who. And we're going to go back in time, and you have the opportunity to meet yourself when you were 20 years of age. What advice would you give your younger self which would help you get to the stage you are now maybe a little easier? What tips would you give?
Give up alcohol, for starters.
Yeah.
Lead a more contented life. It's not just a case of being contented. You've got to be contented with being content, which sounds a bit strange, I know, but if you have a contented life, you do not suffer all the slings and arrows of misfortune.
Yeah.
It just passes you by. So yeah, I would say lead a more contented life. Stop worrying, because at the end of the day, you've only got a very short life. It's an alpha and omega, and whatever you do in between. If you spend most of the time in between worrying about everything, then which is a natural thing to do. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah, absolutely. It can cause problems at a later date.
Yeah.
One of the biggest killers in the world is stress.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, if I could go back and speak to myself again and say, look, just enjoy what you've got. Develop the attitude of gratitude.
Oh, I love it. What a great way to finish today. And your first bit of advice there, give up alcohol. I wish I could go back in time, and I think I would give myself the same advice. I'm free of alcohol now, but it's not been a friend, really, over the years.
No,
So
it's the biggest enemy. It's something that your internal organs have to cope with instead of actually looking after the food that you've digested. When I run a pub up in Oxfordshire, I saw one particular life completely destroyed by alcohol, and I didn't realise he was being destroyed by it.
No, I can second that. I mean, I was a police officer for 20 odd years, and if I think of all of the crimes which were underpinned by alcohol, it's certainly in the majority.
Yeah.
You know, alcohol is such a negative impact on the world.
Domestic
If it
violence
disappeared
and
tomorrow, I don't think the world would be a worse place for it.
Absolutely.
Although we're sitting outside a pub right now.
But we've had two non-alcoholic drinks.
Yes, we've had a coffee.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jim, what can I say? Thank you so
Thank you very
much.
It's been a pleasure. It
It's
really has.
sharing your life journey with you today.
Thank you.
Has been inspiring, and there's some parts of it which I'm going to take away and are going to definitely help me on my journey to Chap Nirvana,
Fantastic.
and I hope some of the folks out there feel the same.
And I think that too as well. Please be safe. Attitude of gratitude.
Attitude of gratitude. What a wonderful way to end today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, give us a thumbs up, click subscribe, see more like this. If you would like to feature here and have a conversation with me on your life journey, drop me an email. Now, don't bother if you live outside the United Kingdom, all right? Because that's where I live, and that's the only realm that I can travel to. But it would be great to feature more people's journeys on that Chap Nirvana pilgrimage so that we can all benefit from the stories like we've had today from Jim. So, until the next time, take care, and I will see you again very soon.
Bye-bye.